Does anybody on the Panthers have a better approval rating right now than Derrick Brown?
Probably not.
Probably not. Definitely.
Maybe J.J. Jansen.
Long snappers have a way of not really disappointing you unless things go really, really bad.
Been with the team for longer than anybody.
Derrick Brown is great. Derrick Brown needs to be better. Just because he is the best Panther, if you think he is, doesn't mean that he is all world. And sometimes you need to be reminded of that, right? Here's what it is. Here's what I'm trying to get at. Everyone has a best player on their high school team, right? There's a quick realization when you get to college of any sport where you're like, oh, we were all the best players on our high school team, weren't we? I might be the 15th best player here. That's unusual to me. Derrick Brown is the best Panther. That doesn't mean he's like the best player in the NFL. You can simultaneously be worth a large amount of money that you're being paid, or it was a good decision to give you the amount of money that you're being paid, while also acknowledging there's a lot of upward mobility that you need to go chase. ESPN talked with anonymous executives and coaches because that's what you have to do to get a honest opinion on anyone else in the league, right? About the defensive tackles. They had them rank all of the defensive tackles in the NFL. They've done this for other positions. I didn't feel the need to look for Panthers. But when the defensive tackles came out, I was like, oh, I'm going to click this link. Let's see where Derrick Brown is. Seventh. Behind guys like Quinnen Williams and Chris Jones and a few others. Seventh. There it is. Do you know why he's seventh? He just, broke the record for total tackles by a defensive tackle, by an interior defensive lineman. He had over 100. He's an unbelievable player. Why isn't he in the top 5? He's a bit one-dimensional. He is a run stopper extraordinaire. His career high in sacks is 3. This past year, he had 2 sacks. He was tied with 8 other defensive tackles for 27th most sacks by a player at the position. Which means there's someone who's not one of the 32 best defensive tackles in the league that is tied with him for number of sacks. He's the 4th highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL. He has to play better to make that make sense. With, I've used this term in the past, but it's just a good one when it comes to sports. With great money comes great responsibility. The guy got paid a boatload of money this offseason. They moved on from Brian Burns, yet paid Derrick Brown. He's going to have to get to the quarterback. He's a great run stopper. He's going to have to get to the quarterback. Right? And there are a long history of great interior defensive linemen in the NFL that were mostly run stuffers, right? They were guys that were like, yeah, you're going to have to use the center and the guard just to block me, and that's going to open up things for everybody else. You know what else those old school defensive tackles were? They were in the old school, which means they were playing against offenses that first priority was to get their running back 35 carries a game. I think I saw something that said in 15 years ago, so 2009, whatever it was, there were 9 running backs with at least 1,200 yards running. This past year, Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, so it's just one.
There's uno. So you can't just be a run-stopping defensive tackle anymore and be worth being one of the top 5 highest paid at the position. You have to bring things to stop the passing game as well. So this is one of those deals where Derrick Brown is like I said, he might be the guy with the highest job approval rating of anyone on the Panthers. Definitely anyone that was around last year when the Panthers were the worst team in the NFL. He's a top 10 player at his position. But with any upset in sports, right? Which, by the way, if the Panthers go on like a run, if they flirt with winning the division, if they flirt with the playoffs, any of that, it will be one of those Cinderella upset runs. They were the worst team in the NFL last year and didn't even benefit from getting the first overall pick because of it. Like, if it's going to happen, you're going to need your best players to play great. It's very easy to look at somebody like let me think of an example here. Very easy to look at somebody like Dane Jackson and say, Dane's got to step up, right? Dane Jackson, who, if you're unaware of, he's right now penciled in to be the second starting corner opposite of J.C. Horn. But he's a journeyman, right? Brought in on a middle to lower free agency deal. It's like Dane Jackson has to step up. They need him to play corner. They need him to lock up the opposing team's second best wide receivers. It's like, yeah, but you're asking then a journeyman to play like a Pro Bowler. What's easier? Asking Derrick Brown, a guy that was drafted high, a guy that has immense physical abilities, a guy that you're paying, $20 plus million a year, to play like a top 3 player at his position, or it is to ask Dane Jackson to say, when Drake London's on your side, you got to lock him up. Right? When Chris Olave's on your side, can't ever get out of position. It's probably easier to say, you know what? Try to give us 2.5 seconds of coverage, and then Derrick Brown's going to get him on the ground in the backfield. It's probably easier to look at your best players to make it easier on your role players than it is to look at your role players to make it easier on your best players. So if the Panthers are going to get significantly better from last year, it's going to be Bryce, it's going to be Derrick, it's going to guys that you recognize by their first names. It's going to be Deontay. I don't know if offensive linemen are quite first name guys, but Robert Hunt.
Icky, yeah.
Icky for sure.
For sure.
Like, it's going to be the guys that have the upwards mobility, like the top end talent that are most likely going to be the drivers towards any kind of improvement.
And this is what you expect from young players. Like, he's still a young player, even though he's been in the league for 4 or 5 years. He's still a relatively young player. You still expect your young players to grow and develop, and that's, like you said, the next evolution of his game. The young man set an NFL record for number of tackles for defensive linemen last season. Like you said, guy could stop the run all day. That's the next progression in his development as a player. Hopefully with other guys like A'Shawn Robinson playing next to him, and maybe if other guys around him can help alleviate some of that pressure so he's not getting double-teamed all the time, maybe that helps him out a little bit too.
He's 26 years old, and he'll be 26 for this entire year.
Yeah.
That's like
you should
prime years.
You should still be getting better.
Like now is the years where it's like put it together, right? 25 and younger, you're figuring it out. You're on a rookie deal. Now you've gotten the extension, you've gotten the commitment from the organization. You're 26. I'd say between like 26 and 32 for an interior defensive lineman is like, all right, go get it, right? Like now, give me 6. I'm not at. By the way, let me be clear on this. I'm not asking for 14 sacks. Like,
unless you're gonna do it.
Like, give me 6.5. You know what I mean?
Unless you're gonna do it.
Give me. Yeah, I'm not gonna turn them down. I'm not gonna be like, you've reached your max.
Like, hold on, hey, we cap commissions here, buddy. I need you to stop.
Like, give me 6.5 sacks and not a massive drop off in your run stop, and I'm good. That's how you end up the 4th best defensive tackle in the league, rather than the 7th.
I mean, even just some other big play stuff, like forcing a couple of fumbles. Maybe it's batting down a couple more passes, things like that. Like, you can add other things to your game as opposed to just being an amazing tackler, you know?
And by the way, there's like way more that goes into it than just like, hey, I get him on the ground. There's positioning, There's athleticism, there's chaseability. There's a lot. He's 6'5", 320, and he's a freaky athlete. Like, use that to not just get 100 tackles, but give me 6.5 sacks.
But the fact that other GMs and people around the league look at a player on the worst team in the league and say, hey, that dude is one of the best in the league at his position.
At least one of the players on the worst team. I don't know how many.